This is the final episode of the entire road trip, and it is long, I'll be honest. Most of that is the Q&A section at the end that I did with my family. Here it is, have at it, the final episode. Thanks for watching. Today we are at Carlsbad Caverns. This place is huge. It's hard to portray the magnitude of this cave. It took me 3 hours to go through the entirety of it, and I took the elevator back up to the top. The only thing I could compare to it is some of the European cathedrals, but this was not made by man, which in my eyes makes it all the more wonderful. There were many displays attempting to explain the geological processes and events that occurred to form this cave, but they were way beyond my comprehension. Regardless of how it formed or how long it took, my first thought was that I was glad to be alive in this point in history where I could access such a spectacular place so easily. The main formations in the cave were lit, and understanding how each stalactite and stalagmite was formed, I would fast forward their formation in my head and envision this amazing process. This is a must-see place, and I cannot imagine this not being a part of my trip. Now the bats put on quite a spectacle every evening at Carlsbad Caverns. However, they will migrate during the colder months, but this is probably one of the last of the season. It's October, it's getting a little bit chilly out, and the bats are starting to leave, and they are leaving en masse. These are Mexican free-tail bats, just like the ones we have back home. And these bats have one of the widest ranges of any bat. And so seeing them here in New Mexico come out of the cave is really awesome because I've seen them come out from under bridges back home in Florida. A big storm moved in right after the bats had emerged, so I had nothing better to do than to keep driving east. It stormed for hours and I made it into Texas. Being a Floridian, I've seen a lot of lightning, but I have never seen it like this, just non-stop. This is fun, I like this. Yeah, driving through a storm, not bad at all. A hurricane was hitting Mexico and it rained all the way across Texas and Louisiana. So I missed out on a lot of things, but there's nothing worse than sitting in a van for hours on end in the rain. I did take advantage of some library time on the coast of Louisiana, and the library had plenty of rabbits running around. In Alabama, I visited the Sipsey Wilderness area in the foothills of the Appalachians. With the weather being cool and wet, I didn't see many reptiles, but it gave me a chance to check out some cooperative invertebrates. All right, guys, so the road trip is pretty much over, and I'm spending Thanksgiving with my family in Georgia. So I'm just going back to Florida right after this. But I know you guys have a lot of questions about the whole trip and all of that. And so I'm going to have my family ask a bunch of questions about the trip, and hopefully that answers a lot of your questions. If you have questions that they didn't ask, feel free to comment down below, and I'll answer them down there. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and warning, my family is kind of weird, but awesome. So it's all good.
I want to know what, on this 7-month journey that you have being, out of civilization almost, out of society, what have you learned that could help you in the real life?
Well, even though I wasn't like out of civilization completely, I learned the most about the real world when I was in Tahoe for the 2.5 months I was there. And basically I just learned, like, if you need to get a job, you just keep looking and you get a job and you do whatever you need to do to get it. And so, but another thing is, like, the way you live, what you choose to spend your money on. Like, money management was a huge thing. Like, I tried to spend as little money as possible, but there was never a point where I felt poor. In fact, I felt filthy rich because I wasn't spending any money. I was like, especially when I was working, because I was getting a paycheck and I didn't even have to touch it because my tips were more than I could spend, more than I had to spend. And so, I mean, there were days when I got a tip at the end of my shift, and that was good. That was all the money I needed for the whole week. So it was really cool to see in a real world situation how you can actually save up thousands of dollars within a few months. And of course, living in a van helps a lot.
Is there ever a time on your trips and in your travels that you were really afraid?
There weren't many times that I was afraid for my life. I do remember one time though. I think I was in Oregon in some random mountains. No clue where I was, and I couldn't really find a spot to sleep. So there was this pull off on the side of the road, just in a mountain road. So I pulled off there, and it was maybe 10 or 11, and I usually go to sleep after dark, and so I had a lot of time to lay there, and someone pulls up and stops, and they're probably 50 feet away, and I hear them open the door and then close it, and the car's just sitting there, and my senses just started going nuts. I could hear every little thing, and I hear the footsteps from the person that got out, and they sounded just super close to my van. They sounded like they were right outside, and I had my window cracked, so that also helped me be able to hear outside noises. And my heart was just kind of racing, and I was like, what is going on here? Because this person seemed like they were up to no good, and I couldn't really see anything. So I grabbed my bear spray, and I just kind of sat there and waited, and I was just dead still. And I think it was someone that just had to pull over, and they peed or whatever. And I don't even know if they knew I was there, because I was kind of tucked off to the side. But I don't know, no clue what they were doing. But that kind of made me nervous. But other than that, not really. I never felt afraid for my life. But even that, I was just really nervous. I was more nervous about what I might have to do to protect myself than I was about someone harming me.
What's the most creative way you had to bathe?
Okay, thank you for asking this question. Because what I did was so creative. I'm really pleased with myself about that. All right, so I think this was in Oregon still, and there was this big lake up in the mountains, and it was dammed off, and so you just had this big wall, and all this water was just spraying out of it. It was this huge stream of water spraying out of the bottom of the dam, and then there was a creek below. And I hadn't showered in several days, and I was like, man, I'm gross. And I tried to find a quiet place along the lake, but it was the weekend, and there was just people all along the lake, and I couldn't find a place to bathe privately, because I didn't want to be hey, I'm a hobo, So I went. So I saw that, and I was like, that is so cool. I have to bathe in that. And so I grabbed my bar of soap, and I walked down there in just my shorts. And I go down there, and I'm getting closer, and the rocks are really slippery. So I have my bar of soap in my pocket. I'm just kind of crawling toward this huge shower of water. And I get to it, and it's the water pressure was just so high. The water is just piercing my skin. And it hurt really bad, but I was like, I have to do this. And so I got all wet, and I got out of it and scrubbed down and stuff, and then I went back in it, and it washed me off. So yeah, I thought that was pretty creative, even if it was a little bit painful.
What was the funniest thing that happened to you?
All right, so up the hill from where I worked, there was this a trailhead, and it had bathrooms and stuff, and it had running water. So I had to shave for work, so I would park up there, and I'd go in the bathroom, I'd shave and get dressed for work and stuff. And this cute blonde girl comes down on her mountain bike, and she's like, "Primitive Tim." And I'm like, no way, no way. And so I was just like, hey, whoever you are, hey. And so she comes over, and she's like, yeah, I saw your van parked up in this other trail a few days ago, and I thought it was really cool. I looked up what you were doing and all that stuff, and I was like, oh, no way. And so then her boyfriend comes down, and I was like, of course, figures. But they ended up being really cool, and I'm glad they met him.
So now that you've done the USA tour, what tour is going to be next?
Okay, so I actually don't really plan on doing another road trip really soon. But if I did, I want to do Central America. I want to drive through Mexico down all the way to Panama and just explore all of that, because that area is just amazing and so exotic and unique. There's a lot of cool snakes. But so yeah, the next trip is probably going to be the next big trip is going to be Central America. But I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that, because I kind of want to. The next step is going to be more real life stuff and changing the world in a more like in a real way.
What was it like staying with people that you had just met, or people that you knew that you hadn't seen for years?
Yeah, of course I enjoyed it, and sometimes it was a little weird, especially because I did stay with people I had never met in person before, and a lot of primitive archery people and a lot of reptile people hosted me, and that was really cool, because it was kind of nice, because like, you know, you've interacted with these people before, but you haven't met them, and so it's kind of cool, you know, hear what they sound like or their mannerisms, see really who they are, and for pretty much, I didn't have any bad experiences staying with people, so it was really cool, and it kind of gives you a lot of faith in humanity, and just like people that are interested in nature in general tend to be really neat people, and people that are willing to offer you, you know, a place to stay. That says a lot about them, that they're generous and they're not like they don't live with fear like Primitive Tim. You know, he might be a freak or whatever.
Okay, so you met a lot of cool and new, interesting people, but you also left kind of everybody that you knew and hung out with on a daily basis behind. Who did you miss the most, and was it me?
Okay, good question. So honestly, I didn't really ever think about like missing people, because I knew I was coming back to them, and so I don't know, like I didn't think about it that much. So no, it wasn't you. Sorry. Actually, to be honest, it was probably Teddy and Alexandria, my niece and nephew, because they're still growing and they're becoming who they are, and they're changing and becoming different people basically. And so like when I would visit someone with kids or something, I had a friend in Texas that I visited, and he had like kids between like 6 and like infant, and I was like, oh man, I miss my niece and nephew, because like this is how they were when I left, and I know they're like way older than that now.
I want to know what was the hardest to get used to, like either having or not having. You know, you didn't live in your van and go around before, so what was the hardest to get used to living like that?
Probably the most difficult thing was food. I opted out of like having any kind of refrigeration or keeping up a cooler. So it was basically anything you can find in your pantry, that's what I had to eat. And so like I remember the first time going shopping, I was like, okay, I cannot get things that need to be refrigerated or go really bad. And if I do, I need to eat it quickly. So I can't get like a lot of something that's gonna go bad in a week. And so, you know, I'd have to buy produce probably like every 5 days or so, and so probably the food situation, but you know, you get used to it after a little while. And so, you know, on my way home going to the grocery store, like I knew what I wanted to get. I was like this, and you know, I look at an aisle and I can say, okay, you know, this aisle, everything's okay.
I just want to know, when you met that random fan on your trip, and when you had stopped at one of those reptile places, how did that make you feel? Did that energize you to keep doing what you were doing? And just, you know, what was that experience like?
On the trip, yeah, I met a few people that had watched my videos before, and they recognized me. That's so awesome. That's like why I did the trip, and just to meet people that had already been, you know, people that comment on my videos or hit me up on Twitter or whatever. That was so cool, seeing like, who are these people actually that watch my stuff? And it kind of gives you a better idea of who your audience is as well. And so, but yeah, meeting those people definitely made me want to keep going and keep doing the videos. And when someone's like, hey, I watched your stuff and I really like it, you remember that. And so when you're shooting something and you don't really feel like filming because you've been driving for a long time, you're just kind of wore out and tired, but you see something cool and like, you're like, you know, that's pretty cool, but I don't think it's that cool, but I know other people are going to think that's really interesting. And so they kind of give you the inspiration, just the drive to keep going and just to do it.
What was your favorite place that you went to, and the place that you would most recommend other people going?
So there's several places that were just amazing. Yellowstone is one of those places. You have to go to the Lamar Valley in northern Yellowstone, and that's just awesome. Another place is Crater Lake, and most of those like huge mountain lakes, like Crater Lake, Tahoe, those are just amazing. Especially Crater Lake, though. Like you can just look at the whole lake and see across the 6-mile diameter. So that was amazing. And then Sequoia, you have to go there. It has the world's largest tree. And that was just so cool to be in that forest and go early in the morning before other people are there because it's so quiet and it's just surreal. Also, the Grand Canyon, you have to go to the Grand Canyon. It is unfathomably large. And you take this in with your eyes and it's just, your mind still isn't comprehending it. And another place that was kind of a surprise to me because I didn't know where it was Carlsbad Caverns. Amazing. I suggest like walk through the whole thing from the entrance. It's only $10 to get in, and walk through the whole thing. Go slow and just look at everything, and then take the elevator back out. But also stay for the evening because during the warm times of the year, tens of thousands of bats come out of the entrance of the cave, and there's just so many. I mean, you can just hear all their wings flapping, and it's a really neat experience. And sometimes hawks and owls will come and try and eat the bats, so that's kind of neat too.
At any time, did you doubt yourself, or why you were taking the trip, or what you were doing?
Honestly, I didn't struggle too much with doubt, but there was one time where I was like, what am I doing? And when I got to Boise, Idaho, my van was like not working well, and it was having a hard time starting, and I couldn't figure it out. Like I've done almost all the work on all my old vehicles, and so I was like, I can fix this, and I could not figure it out. And so I ended up taking it to a shop, and then the guy there had a really hard time figuring it out, and he didn't even know how he fixed it, but he did fix it, and that's all that matters to me. And so I was happy to pay him. But yeah, at that point in time, I was like, crap, am I staying in Idaho? Like, because I told my mother, I was like, wherever I break down, I'm gonna stay there for a while. So I thought I might be staying in Idaho for a little bit. Well, I don't know. Idaho's actually pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I liked Idaho.
Was there anything that you would have done different? Would you have saved up a little bit more money or changed your route or anything like that?
Yes. So as far as money goes, I had way too much money. I should have done this years ago. I had budgeted $4,000 for this trip, and that was way more money than I needed. I actually spent probably about $5,000 less total, but that's on a much longer trip because I stopped for 2.5 months, and the total trip time was 7 months, and I planned for it to only be 2 months. So, yeah, I wish I had done it when I first got out of high school, 7 years ago or whatever. So, yeah, that's one thing I would have done differently. And yeah, just if you got $2,000, you can do this trip and go work somewhere, especially if you're living out of a van. Your expenses are super low, and it's a really cool thing to do. You don't want to do it permanently, I don't think, but hey, whatever you want to do. I'm about ready to be done. As far as route goes, I feel like there were times where I just kind of got lazy and I was like, I'm just gonna blow through this area and get to somewhere that I'm really interested in. And so I may have missed out on some stuff, but the beauty of that is I don't know what I missed out on. So I don't have any regret about that because I don't know what I missed out on. But I think there could have been some really cool things if I had explored a little more and not been so lazy.
So, not a lot of people go on van trips in an old 86 Toyota van across America, but you did. What do you think is different about you versus other people that made you decide to go on this trip?
So I think the difference was before all this, I didn't go on a trip basically because I didn't think I could. I didn't think I'd be successful at it, and it kind of all came down to desperation because I had dropped out of college. I wasn't doing well. I'd been doing the same thing for the last 5 years, and I was just like, this is driving me nuts. I have to do something else. So the desperation outweighed the fear at one point, and that's when I was like, I have to go. Plus, things kind of just lined up for me. The van was cheap. Like, a lot of things were like huge blessings. And I was just like, okay, this is being handed to me on a silver platter. I can't not go. Like, it would be shameful to not do this. I think another thing has to do with a lot of personality and how you were brought up.
Right.
I mean, because our family has basically been very successful. And so here I was not being successful. And, like, my family didn't want me to do this.
I wanted you to do it.
Well, yeah. And so this wasn't exactly what they had planned out for me in life. And so I was like, well, screw it. I've already dropped out of college and I'm not doing anything. So I was like, might as well go do it. And I think some people do get accustomed and they get stagnant. And that's something like I'm really afraid of is getting stagnant in something and just like becoming a robot and doing the same thing over and over. And I don't think that's what people are made to do. I think we're made to progress and keep doing different things and going further and further.
Well, you had said that you're not going to go on a trip for a while. You want to do other things to help out the world. You said. So I want to know what's in store next for Primitive Tim.
Okay, so what's next? So there's a lot of environmental issues in Florida, and there's a lot of people that are really passionate about that. But I don't feel like there's really practical things being implemented. And I think we're all just kind of sitting here waiting on the government to do things for us. Because we vote on Amendment 1, and we're like, all right, the government's going to spend all these millions of dollars on good environmental things. And then Rick Scott's kind of a crook and doesn't do it. And so we're like, what the heck? And so, I mean, personally, I've kind of lost faith in a lot of government stuff. And the government gets its power from us. And so if they're being crooked or not doing what we want them representing us well, we need to just do it ourselves. And so that's kind of what I want to do. And a few ways I'm going to implement that. Because, like, the agriculture industry and the way we're treating our water, using water, I think, are being poorly done. And so there's ways that if we just work at it, we can make these a lot better. So a huge thing for Florida would be catching our own water and using it for the most part. And another thing is growing our own food in our communities. And so I think there's an industry that has not been fully tapped into yet, and we could do a lot of cool stuff with that. And now, having been on this trip, I kind of have that confidence to just like go for something like that.
So all the people you met on your trips, you had all kinds of interactions, I guess. What was the most generous thing anybody ever did to you as a stranger that was traveling through America?
Most generous thing that someone ever did for me. This may not be the most generous thing, but it meant the most to me. So this was actually shortly after I had showered at the dam, and there's some people that saw me doing that, and they took a picture because it was something weird someone was doing. So I came back up, and I started chatting with them, and they're like, "Yeah, we took a picture." I was like, "Oh, you got to send that to me. I want to put that on Instagram." And so they did. So they gave me my phone number, and the guy texted it to me, and we just started chatting. I told him about my trip across America and stuff, and they were camping nearby, and they said, "Hey, you should come over for dinner, and have dinner with us." And that was a super good dinner. They had like these really good sausages, but their dessert was amazing. The lady cooked like this cobbler in a cast iron pot on the fire, and it was like the best thing I'd ever tasted. And it turns out she was like a professional baker. Like she worked at a bakery and made stuff. And so that was really cool because they were just complete and utter strangers. They didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were, and they just invited me into their camp and let me hang out.
Okay. Do you consider your trip a success? And if so, what kind of things could have happened that would have made it not a success?
Yeah, of course I consider it a success. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot of new things. What could have made it a failure is if like I'd gotten in a wreck. That would have been bad and like completely like totaled the van or something. And the van is not a safe van, so I probably would have gotten injured. So that would have been a failure. Also, if I don't know. I think there was opportunity for me to just become depressed and distant and just like say, screw it, like I'm out of here. I'm just not gonna come back, because then it wouldn't really be a trip anymore. It'd become a lifestyle, and it was almost tempting to let this van life become a long-term lifestyle because it was easy to do. Like I traveled 7 months, worked 2 months. That means I didn't have to work for the other 5 months. Like that's everyone's dream, is to not work for, I could work half the year, travel the rest of the year, and still make money, still put more money in the bank than I spend doing this. And so I think if that had happened, it would have been a failure, because personally, I couldn't do what I want to do in life while living in a van like that.
Did you ever get lonely, or did you ever like find people to cure your loneliness?
Good question. I didn't really get that lonely ever, to be honest. I don't know if that's like there's some like wrong, messed up psychological thing with me that for some reason I didn't get lonely. And there were times where I would spend like over a week and I wouldn't interact with anyone I was familiar with. But I was pretty much always, there was someone, every few days I could like say hi, or like, I'm checking out the grocery store or something. But and as far as like curing my loneliness, when I was in Tahoe, I did make a lot of really neat friends. But I didn't have any girlfriends or anything like that, so no.
What are some weird places that you have showered or bathed that is very out of the ordinary that you had to do?
Okay, so before I left, I had planned not to shower and bathe completely in natural bodies of water. And so when I was in Georgia, I made soap with Mr. Mike, your grandfather. And so I had natural soap, so I didn't feel too bad about bathing in lakes or rivers or whatever, so I wouldn't pollute them. Well, not with the soap anyway. But yeah. So I bathed in several rivers, several lakes. I bathed, of course, in the dam. That was weird. Yeah, I went into a church and I saw that there was a shower in their bathroom at a free breakfast. So I didn't ask, and I just went and took a shower. I hope they don't mind. And then I showered a lot at the community college in Tahoe, and nobody seemed to care. And then I also bathed at the hotel I was valeting at. I bathed in the shower, like in the parking garage. There was like a little employee lounge kind of thing with a locker room and stuff. So I bathed in there. But that was kind of awkward because like nobody ever bathed in there. So they're like, whoa, all of a sudden like some random guy is bathing in here when people like walked in. So yeah, I think those are all the places I bathed. But right before I had my interview for the job, I bathed in Fallen Leaf Lake, and it was freezing cold. But not as cold as Tahoe, so. But yeah, I got used to really cold water.
What part did libraries play in your trip?
All right, so before I left on this trip, libraries were pretty much useless because I can just Google anything I want. But on this trip, I don't have Wi-Fi in my van, and I don't want to use my data. So I would stop at libraries probably a couple times a week and edit video, get on the internet, update social media stuff, and research different places that I had planned to go, the next week or whatever, or the next day. And so the libraries were super important because they're free Wi-Fi, free place to stay, usually clean bathrooms, and usually not very crowded at all.
So what was the best library that you visited? Okay.
All right, so out of the 40 or 50 libraries I went to across the country, there's one that does stand out, and it was actually in a trailer in like the woods in Idaho. And it was just like right when I got into Idaho, and I pulled up to this place. I'm like, do they even have Wi-Fi here? And I go in, and the librarian was really pretty, and so I chatted with her for a little bit. But I just remember thinking like, how does this library even have Wi-Fi, like even electricity, because it was like just in the backwoods of Idaho. Like I'd pulled off some road and just gone back in the woods. And so that was one library that really stood out. It was probably my favorite, I guess. And then the lady was really nice.
Did you face any scrutiny or any people along the way that were telling you that you were crazy or that you were going to do it or you're going to give up and go home? And how did you deal with that?
I didn't really come across many people that told me that the trip was doomed or like gonna fail or whatever. And maybe I just kind of like left that out of my memory, because I do remember a lot of people that were very interested in it and very positive about the trip, and they were like, "Oh, this is so cool! Like, I want to do that. Like, I'm really jealous of you." And that was really, really encouraging, because when you're doing something and everyone's jealous of you, you're doing something right. And so that was a lot of that was.
Have you ever got any negative vibes or anything along the way from other people?
No, not really. Sometimes like some hoity-toity lady would be driving beside me and be like, "Ew, look at that crappy old van. Is that a bed in the back? Oh my gosh," And then she'd like turn to her rich husband and be like, and you could tell they were talking about me, and I was just like, whatever. Like, hey, I'm not. Yeah, I would wave at him a lot of times, but I had a lot more people like beeping at me and waving and stuff than negativity. So overall, people were very positive about what I was doing.
I bet that helped out a lot.
Oh, it helped out a lot, yeah.
You said earlier that you're ready for the trip to be over after 7 months. What is it you're most tired of?
All right, so I'm about sick and tired of driving. Like, just sitting in the van and driving for a long time it takes a toll on you. And I just don't like driving anymore. And so I'm just ready to be in one place for a little while. And another thing is, after a while of doing this trip, like all the excitement of like going on this grand trip started to wear off, especially after 7 months. And so I kind of just was like, all right, and I didn't feel like I was being useful or that I was being productive with it after a while. And so, especially like once I got into Texas and I was back in the South, and I just kind of felt like I was home, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to be home and back in a place I'm familiar with. So, but I think that not being productive was a huge thing, because before I was like, all right, I gotta do this road trip and document it and make the videos and stuff. And so once I was starting to get back, I was just like, wow, I'm ready to be done with this. And I'm just tired of editing road trip videos. To be honest, I'm ready to make any kind of other video.
So, there was a girl in episode 11. It was super cute. You guys had really great chemistry. You guys were like catching reptiles and stuff, snakes and stuff together. And I just wonder if anything ever went anywhere with that, or what's going on with that?
All right, so yeah, that's Sarah. She's really cool. I really like Sarah, and I did kind of go after her for a while, but we decided things probably weren't gonna work out, at least right now. Especially since she's in Indiana and it's really far away. So one of us would have had to make like a huge life change. And so like I'm really going towards one thing and she's pretty much going the completely opposite direction. But yeah, Sarah's super cool, and yeah, I crush on her.
Where did you park your van on the average most of the nights?
Okay, so most often some of my go-to places were libraries, especially since I could usually get Wi-Fi from outside of them. So I could like watch my show in my van or whatever. Also like trailheads, where I would go there a lot just because they're almost always out of the way, and then at night nobody really has any business out there, so it was just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. But basically just places where I wasn't going to run into anyone or no one's going to come across me. I stayed at a few Walmarts. I didn't really like doing that though, because it was always lit. Just any random like lot or parking area out in the middle of nowhere was my favorite place to stay. And there was one point where I just like got really tired and I pulled off the highway and I slept a couple hours and got back up in the middle of the night and kept going.
How many miles did you drive and how many states did you go through?
All right, so I drove around 13,000 miles, I think. And I went through 18 states, and I basically went Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I just want to thank everyone that has gone on this journey with me, that I've met along the way, that had me over for dinner. Everyone that watched the videos, commented, liked, shared, all of that. This road trip was life-changing, and I'm so glad I did it. I think everybody needs to do it. And it gave me a lot of clarity in life and what's important and things like that. So, I'm gonna keep doing videos, not as often, but I have a lot of projects that I'm working on right now, and projects that are going to make a difference in this world. So I'm pretty excited, and I really want to change the world in a practical way that everyone can participate in. All right, Kay, peace out, bye.